Hello and welcome to Dive into World Building. And this week our topic is autonomy, individuality, and identity. And when I was thinking about this, I guess I was kind of thinking about what they sometimes call group mentality. It also, words that I think of in regards to this are group mentality. Even to the extent of also thinking that hive mind is relevant. But the question sort of is what individuality means. So yeah, I think it's it might be a little bit of a tricky topic to articulate with, but at the same time, I think the way that we situate ourselves in groups and the way that we conceptualize the self is sort of what I'm trying to get at. And so hopefully we can talk a little bit about it. Let me give you an example of somebody who's played around with this idea of individuality versus groups. I'm thinking of the Tines from Werner Vinge's A Fire Upon the Deep. Are you guys familiar with that book? Okay, well, for those people who may be watching and don't know, or for those of you who don't know, basically the Tines are almost like wolf packs, except that each pack is an individual. And there's a sort of localized telepathic style linkage between the members of a pack. And they only become sentient if the pack has 4 or more members. Which is really delightful. And you have to be there. It changes in this book. It changes all kinds of rules about how people operate, and it's really, really fun because packs have to be very careful not to get too close to one another. So they're. I think actually that it's kind of like psychic understanding of each other, but at the same time it's a little bit like sound. So they don't want to get close enough that there's interference between the different packs. Because if you get, like war really is insanity in this, because if you get too many of these individuals too close to one another, the sort of interference and distortion causes everybody to kind of lose their ability to think, literally, and so the individuals will start kind of losing cohesion. and I mean, it's really fun the way he does this. I actually have a little bit of an article on it on my blog. I did a ridiculously close look at how he's achieving this with these pronouns and various techniques that he's using to portray these individuals. But you know how we always talk metaphorically about how, part of me wants to do this and part of me wants to do that. Well, in this case, it's literal. Part of me goes up the hill to see what's on the other side, and part of me looks behind to make sure, right? And it's, I just loved it. It was delightful. It was really fun. And he also took on the question of what happens if you don't have enough individuals in your group. Well, let's say you're getting a fight and you have 6 members and 3 of them are killed. Then you have to sort of wander around and be like not quite together and not able to really think straight until you find another person who can actually join with you. And so, in fact, it was interesting because there was one instance in which one of the individuals got in a fight with another individual and was actually prevailed in the fight, but lost cohesion and lost a critical number of members, and actually ended up incorporating one of the survivors from the person who had lost the fight so that he could resume his identity as an individual. It was really fascinating. So, yeah. How many of you have ever tried to write a sort of a hive mind kind of thing? Or how many of you read anything like that you thought was done particularly well?
Afraid not.
I can never
Can't think of anything offhand.
maybe, yeah. You know, I mean, this stuff is really, it's really challenging, right?
I can never remember where I read something, but I've read a story, and unfortunately, these were the aliens that the main characters encountered, so they were never POV, but some kind of very small creatures, and individually they were like insects, but the larger the group, the larger the hive, the more intelligent they got. So, you know, maybe 20 or 30 of them were, you know, had some rudimentary intelligence, but then you got 100 of them. They were clearly intelligent creatures, and then, you know, you get 1,000 of them together, and they're like super brilliant.
That's interesting.
But I can't remember where I read it.
I read, and this was some years ago, so I'm not going to be able to get the details. But it's Stephen Pizzock's, and it started with In the Company of Mind. I believe that's the first one. But it's been, I don't know, 15 years at least, maybe 20 since I read it. But it started out, if I'm recalling correctly, with a presumption of, what are they calling it now? Split personalities, whatever the current thing is.
Multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Syndrome, not disorder. I apologize.
But as the story goes on, it's not that simple. And again, I don't want to try to explain what I've forgotten, but it was very good and very interesting in terms of one individual body having multiple people, and then multiple people in different bodies, and now we get into the point where I think you should read it if you want to actually know what it's about, because I will make a mess if I continue. But it was good. I really enjoyed that.
Cool. It sounds interesting. Okay, so we've talked so far about I don't know. We've talked about these multiple these individuals that are multiple creatures now, and then we've talked about that in a couple of different ways. I think that this is not just about hive minds and packs and that sort of thing. I think it also has to do. It's the topic I'm thinking of is how we perceive our group membership. Are we as individuals a part of a community, and what is the meaning of that? Because in America we have this idea that everybody is critically an individual and has wants and needs and that kind of thing, and that we should be individually responsible for standing up for what is right, or this, that, and the other. A lot of our a lot of our concepts are based on this principle of individuality and on the freedom of the individual and rights and all this kind of thing. And there tends to be a de-emphasis of one's responsibilities to the group, for example. You know, there are a million movies about, you know, people breaking the rules because they felt that they were doing the right thing. Practically our entire superhero canon is based on vigilantes who wanted to go outside the law because, you know, they had these individual ideas about what needed to happen vis-a-vis the criminal elements in their cities, et cetera, et cetera.
It is very much a Western cultural tradition that lionizes the individual, and in particular the exceptional or great or whatever individual, in a way that other cultures do not necessarily do so. You don't have the same kind of cult of the individual in some cultures where, you know, family or clan or group or tribe or whatever are much, much more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what my big back burner story is, culture that I play with. It's the extended family clan is pretty much the unit of society.
And how does that play out, Linda?
Well, that's one of the things I'm still playing with, but I've got a character that I think is torn between her personal needs and what society says should be her membership in her family, and she's trying to figure out how to deal with that.
I think that the expectations of groups are very influential, and I think, in a way, our focus on the power of the individual tends to de-emphasize the influence of group behavior in, I think, a detrimental way sometimes, because we're less likely to be able to recognize the power of group expectations. And, you know, we talk about peer pressure and how you should resist it, but at the same time, it's not as straightforward as that, right? You know, peer pressure is, when we describe it that way, is actually coming from a relatively small group, whereas we have lots and lots of expectations and things that are coming from a much larger group that makes it much harder to recognize where those things are coming from. I guess I'm thinking of problems like prejudice and things that come from a systemic organizational level rather than from the individual level, and the larger scale expectations actually support individual behaviors that are less than savory, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the end of Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. Is that the one? No, it's not. It's one of the Star Treks where the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one, and then they change it round to sometimes the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And it's like, well, what makes that one so special? Why that one compared to those many? It's like, what criteria are we using to decide that a one is so much better than all those other people?
Right.
And what if they're different needs? Different needs have different weights.
Right, and I think also, one of the things actually something that makes me, you make me think of something about storytelling in general, which is that it's very hard to get super excited about a character who just needs to save the world. The world needs saving, and this character needs to go and save the world. And you go,
I am so bored with the world needing saving.
right, exactly. Why do we
Really,
care?
I really am. I'm like, oh please, come on. It just no, it does. It's annoying because you can't make. It seems you can't make a film these days without, the stakes are that the world or the universe or several universes or whatever will be destroyed or will utterly cease to exist unless the heroes do X. It's like that. After a while, it's they've got to this stage where, oh, that's the only scope that can possibly matter. It's like, well, that's not mattering anymore. So where do you go next? You can't go anywhere bigger than the entire universe is at stake. So maybe, just maybe, we need to think about something else.
It's the same as your needs of the many versus the needs of the one, right?
Yeah.
Because the needs of the many can be so diffuse as to be meaningless, just the way you're describing. Whereas the needs of the one, if that person is important to you, then you can pretty much drop everything because you care about them, right?
And that's sometimes that'll come across as selfish. This is my world. It needs saving. The way for me to save it is to protect this individual, and some of the things I might have to do to protect this individual are going to come across as wrong or selfish or flat out evil to people who aren't seeing it, people who are outside my world. Good examples would be, saving your child from whatever. And people do things that are foolish, cruel, wrong, to save their child from a real danger or a perceived danger.
Yeah.
But it's their world that needs saving.
And yes, there are a lot of ways that this gets done badly. Especially, I find it especially annoying when you've got these macro stakes, like we're all, like every piece of existence is going to be destroyed, and my real motivation is that I have this girlfriend, right? Don't do that to me. I mean, surely there's more to the world than, oh my gosh, everything's going to come crashing down.
And I'll never have a date again.
Save her, whatever. Oh, give me a break.
Well, if that's what it takes to motivate some people,
Yeah.
But maybe that's something that could be, profitably investigated. What is it that motivates people to save the world? Because, you look at it today, there are a lot of people out there who are thinking that they're doing things that they need to do to save the world, whether they be ecological activists or whether they be members of Islamic State in wherever it is that it's Islamic State called this week. There's huge differences between their approaches. They all think that they're saving the world because they've all got a particular set of values as to what the world means and matters to them.
Yeah.
And most of them form like-minded groups. I mean, people don't individually go off and save the world. They form a society, a group, a cult, whatever, to go and do the world saving because it's too big to save by oneself. And people do acknowledge that in real life in a way that doesn't tend to happen, particularly in movies, and to a lesser extent in fiction.
Yeah.
Except things like, the Avengers, where you've got a group of people who, they're superheroes and they have individual strengths, and as opposed to, say, Superman, who could save the entire world all by himself. But is he ever... Oh, the Justice League. I forgot about the Justice League.
Yeah, but that's why I could never take the Justice League seriously, because you've got Superman and Green Arrow in the same group, and it's like, I'm sorry, that's really not going to work. What exactly is Green Arrow capable of doing that Superman kind of can't? Given Superman's multitude of powers. So the Avengers tends to be a bit more balanced, although they're still.
Hey, what were you going to say earlier?
Sorry.
I forgot already.
Actually,
Well,
this
if
branch of the
let us
discussion
know.
keeps making me think of Flinks.
Thanks. Oh.
Is it Alan Dean Foster?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god, I read the first one of those in like grade school somewhere.
Yeah,
I only
it's
ever read
back
the
in
first
my-
one though.
Well,
First
after
part.
you get on in the series, he's saving the universe because he has abilities that no one else has,
Oh no.
or he's not actually saving the universe. He's saving all the intelligent beings in the universe.
Wow.
Oh.
What
there's a
constitutes
question.
intelligent?
Yeah.
My parrot was damn smart.
What was the title
Yeah,
there from the Alan Dean
I'm-
Foster?
Well, it's a whole series
Flink.
of books around this character named Flinks.
Oh,
Yeah. She'll put it in. She'll put it in for you.
sure. Oh, sure. That was how I was going to spell it, oddly. I must have heard it somewhere, right?
Yeah, and the earlier books in the series are more just kind of a YA coming of age thing. But as you get farther down the road, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Until it becomes trans-dimensional, and oh my god. Anyway, yeah. So that is certainly. I mean, I think I have seen stories where the character's motivation is they need to save their family, right? Very often it's very often it seems to be that it's an individual that needs to be saved. But I think it's kind of fun. I mean, so you've got I was thinking about Aliette de Bodin's work because she put such an emphasis on family. One of the things that I like about a situation where there's tightly knit family or other kinds of social structures is that people just can't do any old thing they want. Right? I mean, because in our world, we feel like we can have a lot of personal choice, but on lots of levels, we kind of don't. Does that make sense? And so, for example, fiction tends to look at somebody in a social situation who's under a great deal of stress and say, well, they're going to leave behind all their values and every last connection that they have ever had to anyone they know in order to accomplish X. Or faced with situation Y, the character has to fix it by doing this thing that's going to cause everybody to hate them. But then afterwards, really, they don't hate them all that much. I was just looking at Star Trek the other day where it's like, well, you did all these things that were against the law, but you just saved the world, so I guess it's okay.
Is that like the fourth one with the whales?
Yeah. I mean, I love that movie.
Oh god, yeah.
What's it actually called?
But
Star Trek 4,
not-
The Voyage Home.
Oh, yes, that's right. It's not actually Save the Whales.
No.
It might as well be. To be honest.
Exactly, that's what we always call it.
Bring
yeah.
the whales into the
I've
future so
always
they
thought
can
it was
talk
pretty- I thought
to
it was cool.
aliens.
Hey, even-numbered Trek movies are good. The odd-numbered suck.
That's
usually.
for the original. Yes, that's a very good
rule of
principle.
thumb
Well,
there.
rule of thumb, go for the even numbers.
Works
Pretty
for me,
much, yeah.
Well, so
pretty much.
one of the things that I think that could use more emphasis one of the things I think could use more emphasis is a consciousness that the things that we choose as individuals are not without consequences in the larger sphere, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we're not going to do those things, right? I mean, in my book, there's a lot of pressure on my main character to get something done and to fix some problems and to stop his brother from doing X, Y, or Z. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes right down to it, if he does the things that he needs to do in order to accomplish this, he's going to be kind of blowing up his whole entire social situation, right? And so he has to be very careful about what he decides to do and whom he tries to ask for help, right? It's very complex, and so sometimes he actually just doesn't get the things done because he has no leverage within that social construct, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't often see people in stories going, well, I can't do that because, not because it's physically impossible, but because there would be these very complex social consequences that I don't think I can survive somehow.
Yeah.
On a small scale.
You know, where you might find it being really good, though, is in things like Emma, the period dramas, where there is a really, really strong sense of the interconnections of the social and the consequences of whatever actions people are taking. So that actually, I bet you could find a lot of it in historical fiction as well. I am not an expert on that, though. I don't read a lot of Regency era stuff, and you know.
Oh, I'd be addicted to very bad Regencies, but.
But I do remember seeing, I have read Emma, and I remember seeing the movie, and they did something really clever at the beginning of the movie, which was they started off with this spinning globe, and you're like, oh, you know, your immediate impression of the spinning globe is that it's a globe, right? And it's like, I think it had stars on it or something, and it was like, oh, it's, you know, this is the universe. But then, as you get a better look at it, you realize that this thing is actually an ornament, and that each of the stars is like one of the houses in the town. And so, if you think about it and you realize what they're doing with that shot, it's basically saying, look, we're about to start a movie where these people's whole entire universe is this one town, right?
I like that. I think people consider them microcosms now, just because you sort of are expected to just ignore everything where you live and whatever your family wants and whatever. I mean, that's sort of like the expectation in America.
Right.
You're supposed to just go and do whatever you want, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah. The cult of the individual is triumphant.
I know, and I guess like all I can ever think of is for some reason it's always stuck in my head. I put it in the chat bar about like the Sailor Moon. I almost like it sort of really boils down to this sort of cultural divide to me, sort of summed up in that. Every time, you know, Sailor Moon's big confrontations with the villains is always like, she's always saying like I won't let you do whatever you want. You can't just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, whereas I don't think that would occur to Americans or American writers to consider that. You know what I mean? If that's
Yeah.
like to have a character say you can't just do whatever you want. and I'm not going to let you just do whatever you want. That's like the villainy is just doing whatever they want regardless of consequences.
Right, right.
So that's what makes the villain in Sailor Moon. I mean, they have more nefarious purposes than that usually, but but I always thought that was very interesting. That was always very interesting to me.
But if you ignore the consequences of doing whatever you want, you're ignoring all of the consequences of something. Not just the ones that you want to happen. You can say whatever you want, but that doesn't mean everybody else in the world has to accept it. Either listen or respond the way you want to, or keep their mouths shut, or not go and do something, act in some way that they want to because of what you said or did.
In fantasy, we lionize, these individual heroes, the chosen one and so forth. But the other side of the coin is, what's any dark lord in fantasy but somebody who just wants to do exactly what they want to do and happens to have the power to do it? There's no difference.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a 2-year-old who just, wants to stay up and, just wants that. Doesn't want anything else, just wants that right then. And, doesn't care what mom or dad think, doesn't care,
Doesn't look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. Like if I'm stay up however long I want to stay up, you don't know, you don't have the sense that you're going to be cranky as all get out the next day and really wish that you could go to sleep, but not actually even making the connection that that's a consequence of your previous behavior. And I wonder if you get in some of the characters who not only can't make the future connection between what I'm doing now, what I'm saying now, is going to branch off and cause these things in the future, but if they can't look backwards and say, this is how we got to this point, then that's not a good thing. You have to be able to look backwards and forwards, big picture. Not just in the present, but in the future and past. Huge picture.
Okay. Awesome. Well, so can we take a quick sort of left turn in our topic?
Sure.
Because one of the things that I was hoping we might be able to talk about is the concept of boundaries and bodily autonomy. Because so far we've been kind of thinking conceptually about people's social roles and that sort of thing. Let's just say that across cultures there are very, very different rules about how much people touch one another in a particular community, for example, and what kind of personal space you get.
Eye contact.
Right, whether eye contact is appropriate, and what that sort of consists of. How do you define respect in terms of your? It's almost like there's sort of impingement on another person's boundaries or their space. And I thought that would be worth talking about in this particular topic. There are a lot of cultural differences, and then there are some cultures where people are constantly touching each other. Well, I mean, we're not, if you're not used to being in a culture where there's a lot of touching, it can be just so too much, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, people just hug you now, and they don't even ask, and it's like, oh my god, how has that replaced the handshake? This is like one of my big rants. It's just people just run up and hug you, and it's like, I don't know you enough for that.
People who don't like to be hugged by their close family members.
Hey,
How does that work for them? No,
think
it
how it
doesn't.
feels to come over here from the UK.
Yeah.
Hugging. You don't even hug people in private in England, you know, let alone in public. I still have problems over here. I'm kind of used to it, but it's still not, you know, it is very, very strange. And then there's other alternatives, though. I mean, boys holding hands. You do not see boys holding hands, teenage boys or whatever, holding hands in America. You go to Eastern Europe and it's normal practice. There's places in Eastern Europe it's perfectly normal practice, and nobody would look at it twice. But there are some very, very different things that cultures that are otherwise similar seem to do about touch.
Yeah. And also, you know, there are all kinds of things like there was a big change in teaching at a certain point during my lifetime where it became not okay for teachers to touch the students too much. You know, kids in elementary school. Because in my elementary school, you know, we were all very friendly and we would totally hug our teachers and they would hug us back and whatever. And then there was a point where it was like, well, instances of abuse had occurred, and so now it was really not okay for teachers to touch their students, etc. Jay, you had something to say?
Yeah. My mom is a teacher, and then I also remember, like, in my school when I was in elementary school, I never hugged my teacher. None of us would hug our teachers, I don't think. I don't remember it, and I don't know if that was just because we're like stalwart Midwesterners, or what. But that was like, nope, totally hands off, right?
Is that a girl thing? Because I don't think boys would hug teachers. Is that just a girl thing, or am I missing something here?
No, because you know what? Okay, my mom, those kids are on her like flies on honey. And she's like, please, you know, and she's trying to, you know, like, you can't, again, it's like, it's right, you're like, you cannot hug your kid, you can't touch the kids, you can't hug the kids, and she's always saying, like, please don't, but they're just like, you know.
What year does she teach?
Oh, like, third, fourth.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and she did like summer school with like kindergartners. You know, she's done all of it. She's done all of it, all the lower grades, like 5th and down. She's done all of it. And so it might be like the kids. I don't know. Like, again, like this is like California, so I don't know. Like, everybody's all huggy or something.
They do seem to be a little more. I think I don't know much about the East Coast, but certainly in my experience, the further west you get, the nearer California you get, the huggier people are.
Yeah, so, you know,
it's like the nexus of
it's
hugging.
true. It's like, you're not supposed to touch the kids. And as much as she says, you're not supposed to hug me, they're like, Mrs. Gilson! You know. So I don't know. Like, again, it's weird, and it is, because, like, man, in my day, it never would have occurred to me to hug a teacher. Not in a million years.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I mean, not, but just because, you know, most of our teachers were men, but yeah, that's just not something we would do in England anyway. And it'd be worse. Yeah. I mean, you know, the teenage boys hugging female teachers that they have crushes on, that's just never going to end well. It's like, no, just don't go there. Just don't go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Well, it is funny, you know.
I think in some places they're even discouraging kids from hugging one another.
Ooh.
That may relate to the vaccine
talking middle school, but when you're talking kindergarten, is.
Yeah, I think in kindergarten, though, well, you know, it's tricky, isn't it? Because, like, okay, you know, I mean, I think that what in one of the tricky things that you're dealing with when you're working with, say, kindergarten, is that kids have probably less self-control, and they're probably more used to an affectionate environment, right? And a lot of times, why a lot of times, why should you say, oh, gee, well, you can't hug each other? If the kids want to hug each other and it's not hurting anybody, then fine, right? But then things start getting a little tricky because there are some kids who will actually, and I have actually had stories about this at schools that I have attended, where there will be a kid who just wants to hug everybody, and other kids are not ready for it, and they're not okay with it, and this kid will go around hugging them anyway.
And yeah, will not take no for an answer.
Right, and then of course you get a whole other raft of issues, right? Because we do need to set up our cultural concepts of autonomy, and one has one's ownership over one's own body, and we get to decide where our boundaries are and who gets to and who doesn't, right? In a way, I think that blanket rules against that kind of thing are actually skirting around the problem, and not really addressing some of the complexities that people really need to be able to understand in order to grow up in the world and not hurt other people. Because if you say, okay, well, it's okay, it's okay to touch people without their consent, not so much, right? But at the same time, if you just make this a blanket prohibition, then yeah, you're actually not addressing some of the subtleties of individual interaction that are actually really important for people understanding each other later.
I remember a friend of mine put up some link on Facebook to like a convention that it had like mixers and it had like color-coded buttons or something, and it would be like, this is like, it's fine, like one color would be, I don't mind physical contact, like another one would be like, or maybe it was conversation. It was like levels of conversation, like, please talk to me, please don't talk to me, or something. I don't know, but it's almost like if we just had if all those little kids could just have these little sets of T-shirts that say, "I need a hug today, don't touch me." Maybe we just here's your school uniform. It's like different mood T-shirts, right? You just pick your mood or something. I don't know. It's just.
Could actually be something as simple as little necklaces, even the red, green, yellow, to say green, okay, you can talk to me. You can talk to me if you really need to, and if it's red, it's like, go away, leave me alone. I'm not going to talk to you.
I'm having a bad day. Don't touch me.
Yeah. And that is a simple code that pretty much anybody who knows what a traffic light looks like is something that can be fit in.
Right.
Yeah, it's the autonomy thing. The blanket rules take away autonomy. They don't enhance it in any way.
Well, they don't understand. They don't enhance our understanding of the needs of individuals, I guess. So in a way, yeah. Some people are okay with things, and some people aren't okay with things. And one way to take care of the problem is just to make it so that nobody gets anything, right?
Yeah, no.
But like you said in the sidebar a minute ago, especially with young children, but really people of any age, sometimes you need physical contact.
Oh, absolutely. I actually had an experience kind of like that where I had been in Japan, where the rules of touch are very, very different, and especially if you're a foreign student and whether or not you're with a family, you're not going to touch your host family. You just aren't, right? And I had spent about a month there, and I was starting to get really depressed, right? I was like, man, what is wrong with me, right? And then I came into school one day, and the kids at the school, there were only 40 of us, and 5 of us were from California, and one of them happened to be this guy that I knew, from my school, and I was like, dude, I need a hug. And he gave me a hug, and it was like, this is what I've been missing for months. I mean, like, it was like there had been this big piece of me that was not okay. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at infants who don't get touched often have failure to thrive issues. So it's a very complicated issue, right?
Yeah.
The wire monkey mom? Jay, do you have something to say?
No, it's just that, that experiment where they gave, like, the baby monkeys, like, the wire mom, or, like, the plushy mom, and, like, the ones with the wire mom without contact were, like, shrivel up and die, kind of thing. And then, like, I don't know if they literally, like, let them die or not, because, science.
I thought the wire mom had, like, a bottle where they could feed. So they could either get food or get the plush snuggly.
Right, and then, like, the ones that had the snuggly mom felt more nurtured because they could snuggle up to it and they thrived better than the ones that just got, like, the wire thing with the feeding bottle. You never heard of that one?
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
if you're English, you're growing up with the wire mom, and if you're American, you're growing up with the plushy mom.
The wire monkey mom was a little confusing, just a little.
I should have been British. I swear to God.
It's not too late. We have ways. Our simple conversion ray will be applied.
Yeah, so I guess the last thing I wanted to mention, just because it's kind of funny, is that when you're in Japan, you tend to stand further away from people because you want to stand at bowing distance. If you try to shake somebody's hand and bow at the same time, you are going to conk heads.
Headbutt.
Shake my hand. Ah!
There should totally be a culture where headbutting is the polite thing. Well, you just,
Well,
wait, that's Scotland. That's Scotland. Yeah.
There may be urban legends of you take people from two cultures at the extremes of personal distance, and you'll see can see one person constantly backing up to maintain distance, and the other person is constantly pushing that they will like go across the room doing that.
I actually call that a chasing conversation. And I have had those because, in particular, when you and some guy who likes you don't agree on how far away you're supposed to stand, you end up having these conversations where you're constantly backing up and the other person's constantly coming forward, and you're like, this is ridiculous. So yeah.
In some situations that can make one person, the backing up person, feel threatened. My mother has a friend, a colleague, who's from Argentina and grew up in Argentina, has a very hands-talking, in-your-face, not aggressive or even very assertive, but right there, very close, social conversational pattern. And so that's what my mom observed about that. They're both women, and they're roughly the same height. Sort of, the woman from Argentina is actually very short. But it was interesting to have a conversation like that all the time. She got used to it because they're friends and they're colleagues and they've known each other a very long time. But at the same time, believe this is the same culture. When you're indicating someone who's nearby, but is not in the group, in the conversation, you don't fling out your hand and point to them. You gesture with your chin or nod of the head, instead of saying, "Oh, that person over there." It's sort of that person over there who we're talking about.
Right.
Not as in tweet, not adding them for the conversation, not drawing them in or letting them know they're being talked about.
Well, that makes me think we need to start talking about gestures. That might be a good topic for next week.
Good one.
Because in Japan, you don't point at people either, but you don't point like this. You point like this with your whole hand. So if you want to point at anything, you point with your whole hand, because sticking out a finger and pointing is rude. Not that it depends which finger it is, just don't use this one. So
fingers, they're all as bad as each other.
Yeah, gestures, because this is a gesture of admonishment in some groups and some social situations.
Cool. So let's do gestures next week.
Okay.
It sounds like awesome. You guys have been wonderful today, and thank you for sticking with this topic, which wasn't a super easy topic, but I think we talked about a lot of really interesting things, and some of the things that I had hoped to cover got covered. So I'm happy, and I appreciate you guys for being here. So join us next week for gestures, and I'm going to stop the broadcast.